picture says more than 1,000 words, and a metaphor often generates very many pictures, some of them more useful, others perhaps less. My name is Frank Witte, and I'm the departmental tutor of the Department of Economics here at UCL, and I would like to welcome you to this session, but also to University College London in general. I will be using a metaphor in my talk about economics, and the metaphor will be taken from mountaineering. And the reason why I'm using that is because I want to give you something on your way to think about while you are in this process of making a decision as to where you would like to study and what subject you would like to study. I think it's important that you realize as a prospective student that a significant part of what we call the admissions process or the selection is actually on your side. And let me try to explain that briefly. If you would compare your studies to a marriage, albeit one which only lasts 3 or 4 years, then it sometimes becomes a little bit clearer that the purpose of, say, applying to a university is not in order to do everything you can in order to get in, but rather to find a good match. We get roughly 3,000 applications for our economics degrees for roughly 250 to 270 places. Most of the students that apply to our program with our predicted marks, they satisfy the admissions criteria. So we have a very hard time finding out who of you is a good match for us. So it's very important that you ask yourself the question whether you are a good match for us and whether we are a good match for you. So what I will be talking about what it is that we are expecting of you, and I hope that you will take that with you and ask yourself whether this is the place you want to be in. I've brought 2 pictures here which apparently have nothing to do with economics. The green picture on the left is a picture of glacier ice, and the fuzzy structures that you see in there are bubbles of air. Nothing to do with economics, right? The air gives us, in those bubbles, gives us clues as to what the composition of the atmosphere of the Earth was decades ago, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, and that allows us to infer something about what the contribution of human economic activity is to climate change and global warming. That's got something to do with economics, right? The other picture on the right-hand side, that's the view that I had in April last year. And what you might see in this fuzzy picture that would not qualify for any prize contest is a ridge that is about 25 inches. Is white. This is typically the kind of situation you'd prefer not to get into, where you lose all sense of orientation. Now you might say, what on earth does this have to do with economics? Well, as a student, you might get into a situation like that, where you might lose your sense of orientation in your degree. So one of the things that I want to talk about is, what are we going to do to support you in those situations? We are at UCL Economics, we are a community of researchers. Everybody in the department either does research for most of their time, or does research for part of their time, or supports research that is happening. And if you become an undergraduate student in our department, that's the community you're becoming a part of. What researchers do is, researchers are interested in how the world works, generally, no matter what the subject is. In economics, in particular, we're very interested why people behave the way they do, how people make choices, how people weigh one thing, one interest against another. And that's the core of basically every sub-discipline within economics. So you will be surrounded by people who spend a lot of time asking themselves tough questions. And a lot of people who know and have realized that there are hardly such things as easy answers. Almost everyone who tells you there's an easy answer to all economic problems has not been thinking about it for long enough. If you are a member, what we are expecting of you, in a sense, is that you come with questions. And that you come and you hope to challenge your own ideas about how you think the world works. That you come and that you are critical about what you hear in lectures, what you read in books. that you ask for further explanations, and that you take an active approach to learning economics. Learning about the world around you, learning how what you've learned connects to the world that you see. Many people think these things are very evident. They go to university to be told what the truth is. Well, that doesn't happen. What will happen is your fellow researchers, the staff in the department, your fellow students, your tutorials, they will share with you what they know, what they think, what they believe, where they see empirical proof, where they think it's theory and maybe not empirically proven, what the quality of empirical proof is, what that means. But they will be expecting that you are not just sitting there taking it in, taking notes, or perhaps buying notes from another student who got a really good mark in that course last year. No, you have to generate the knowledge in your own head. And unfortunately, you will have to make lots of choices as to what you think is very important and what not. Why would you study economics? Well, I think in the current time, there's hardly a more, I would say, exciting time to do economics than now. There's lots of uncertainty in the world. It's of course not very nice for the people who live in the world, but it's actually quite nice for the people who study the world. And as an economist, you would become part of that. There are many questions in our day-to-day, say, TV news and in our day-to-day newspapers about how on earth do we make certain decisions? What is a good way of taking collective decisions? How should individual choices and individual preferences influence collective decisions? And those are actually all economic questions. Now, economics is not the only discipline that thinks about these things, but it is the discipline that we in, say, the economics department of UCL, that we have trained ourselves in, have been trained in, and that we work in. The world is a very complicated place, and the reason why it is a complicated place is because we here in this room and everybody outside of this room, we are rather complicated people. We choose certain things, but we might tell a completely different story about why we made that choice. We choose certain things because the generation before us made certain choices. We feel either connected to that or very distant from that. We choose certain things, for example, in environmental economics, we think a lot about choices that we make now that influence next generations, but those next generations are not part of the decision-making process. Those are all economic questions, questions about decision-making, but they're also rather complicated. Studying economics, I would say, studying economics at UCL should be a little bit dangerous. If you come out of a degree program and none of your ideas of how the world is working has been challenged, and you've never encountered a situation where you thought, I can't believe this is the way it is, then I think the degree program you were in wasn't worth the effort. You should be challenged. That doesn't mean that you should believe everything, those who challenge your ideas, but it does mean that your assumptions, the way you think the world works, should be questioned in your degree. And I think our degree does a pretty good job at doing that. And like I said, I think that is an important characteristic of studying. Studying also should be an adventure as far as I'm concerned. And what do I mean by that? Well, the typical thing, I would say the main aspect of an adventure is that you don't know exactly where you're going to get. And it's perfectly all right to start your economics degree with an idea as to what you would like to do afterwards. And it's perfectly fine to think, well, I wouldn't mind having a job afterwards. And don't worry, UCL economics graduates, they find jobs afterwards. And it's perfectly all right to think, I wouldn't mind having a decent salary afterwards. And don't worry about that. UCL economics graduates tend to have that. But you can focus too much on where you want to go. And every year there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of students in the UK, but also in other countries, who view the 3 or 4 years at university as just another box to tick on the way to a particular job or a particular career. And the real risk of that is that you are not getting from those 3 or 4 years what you could have gotten from those 3 or 4 years. And to take on the mountaineering, metaphor, it is perfectly okay to have your eyes on the summit that you would like to reach. But everyone who's been hiking or climbing in the mountains knows that if you do not pay enough attention to where you put your feet next, that trip might be very short. I want to talk about the support that we're going to give you. I want to talk about the skills that we think we need to train you in when you are one of our undergraduate students. I want to talk a little bit about what I think learning is. And of course, I should say something about why we're doing this in the first place. Here you see a picture of the curriculum. Don't worry, I'm not assuming that you sort of photographically memorize this and you take that home. What you should see from the picture is that roughly 3/4 of every year of the 3 years in the degree are, say, compulsory modules in the first and in the second year. In the third year, 3/4 is still supposed to be economics, but you will have a choice from a wide range of economics modules. But in the first year and the second year, 75% of your program is fixed by us. The other 25%, however, are courses that you can choose essentially from anywhere in UCL. I'm saying essentially from anywhere in UCL because if you have some familiarity with economics, you know that always when there is a range of choices, there are also a number of constraints. And it is no different here at UCL. So yes, you might choose any module you like, but of course it should fit into your timetable. You can't have 2 modules at the same time. Of course, you should have enough prerequisite knowledge. So if you decide that you want to do some specific module in English literature, but you've never done any English, which of course would be weird if you are here, but no matter, just an example, then it might be that you won't get access to that module. So there are constraints on that choice. But I do like to emphasize that the choice is broad. And one reason why I like to emphasize that is at quite a few universities, when you study economics, you'll have lots of choice of economics modules, of statistics for economics modules, of mathematics for economics modules, maybe a little bit political economy for economics. Here, I would say, if you have a burning question about the impact of globalization in the Mediterranean Bronze Age, we have a fantastic archaeology department that happens to offer a course where this is one of the topics. So you have a choice of adding things to your economics degree that are really, say, interesting, that are exciting, that could satisfy your curiosity. And if you would say, well, I don't care, I'm not very curious, then I would say, that's fine, but then take it somewhere else. I've put on the side of this curriculum, I've put a map of say, paths up a mountain. And again, the reason behind that is if you study, you are very much, say, pictorially going on a mountain hike or a mountain climb, which means that a lot of what you do, especially at the start, is following paths that others have created for you. And only when you, say, come close to the summits, typically do you start exploring your own individual paths. And that's true for our curriculum as well. The first year is pretty much the base camp. That's where we collect everyone who wants to join us on this climb, where we train you some basic skills that you need, skills that you might not ever want to use, but skills that you need. Every climber, every, say, mountaineer who crosses glaciers has to know how to save people from a crevasse, a crack in the glacier. It's not a skill you hope to need, but you want to be able to use it if you're in the situation that requires it. As an economist, and undergraduate economists are wanting to become economists, as an economist, you may be influencing the lives of tens, hundreds, or thousands of people, whether you're an investment banker, whether you're a policy advisor, or any of the other typical jobs that economics graduates get into. Your choices, your decisions, your recommendations might have an impact on very, very many people. And just as you wouldn't accept it if the captain of your plane bringing you to your holiday destination would say, the bit about landing, I didn't find that interesting in school, so I didn't do that. Similarly, you should know that the rest of society, the people that might be affected by your advice, by your work, wouldn't look nicely upon it if critical skills that you need, you would have sort of decided not to take. So that's why we've put those things into the mandatory part of the curriculum. As you are going through the curriculum, we will try to support you. But support at university, and definitely, I would say, at the economics department here at UCL, is not this. This is a cable car. I like cable cars. I've got nothing against people who like cable cars. And if you want to be brought to the summit and enjoy the gorgeous view and then be brought down nicely again, it's all fine, but we're not offering it. So if you want that, perfect, but you'll find it somewhere else. This is not what support looks like. What support looks like is this. We're giving you a personal tutor. We're giving you tutorial tutors that will help you with your problem sets, your exercises, questions that you might have. We're giving you lecturers that have office hours. UCL provides other facilities, of course internet access, but that's hardly something that you couldn't get anywhere else. But a great library, and a library, for example, is a beautiful place to meet and to study in a good atmosphere together with your friends, and surprisingly, they also have books. And it may not be very popular to say so, but actually the activity of browsing through books and finding that book that speaks to your way of learning, that explains the material that the lecturer has been covering and that you find hard to digest, that explains it in a different way that appeals to your sense of learning and to, that's what you're supposed to do. Taking ownership of your learning is not just turning up to class. It's making it an active thing. It's formulating your own questions. It's asking people those questions. The only foolish question is the question that was never asked. But questions are an essential part of learning. And you learn a lot from asking them. You help your fellow students to learn by asking your questions. And of course, you could hope the favor to be returned. That others ask questions which you think, yeah, I didn't think about that. That's interesting. So what we do in terms of support is we offer you resources. But we are not going to tell you how to use it, when to use it, how often to use it, and to tell us that you're using it. We're making it available. Most of those resources are just the people around you. But it is up to you to use it. Now, does that mean that somebody who never goes to the library, who never talks to his personal tutor, who doesn't talk very much to his friends about anything other than entertainment, and who doesn't really ask questions in tutorials, that a person like that cannot possibly get the degree? I wish I could write exams that would have that effect. But me and all my colleagues, we're all human as well, and we can't write exams that do that. So yes, there will be people who do none of the things of which I say that they are useful and good and that they will help you, and who nevertheless might even get really good marks. However, I'm absolutely convinced that they take far less from these 3 years than somebody who does all these things. Even somebody who might get lower marks, but who might come out of this degree with a much better understanding of his or her knowledge about the world than somebody who views it all as a tick box exercise. If you want tick box exercises, there are places that offer it, but it's not us. One thing that I find very important is to talk to you about the tools and the skills that we think an undergraduate student should acquire before they call themselves an economist at the end. I already referred to that when I was referring to the airplane captain who decided that landing was not a skill he needed because he didn't like, say, the lecturer. Skills are absolutely essential. And as in most mountaineering things, there is a particular skill set of which that particular group of mountaineers, in this case us, the economists at UCL, of which we say, we think this is what you need to be able to do. These are the tools that we think you need to be able to work with. We perfectly accept it if a student says, I really don't like using that tool or this tool. I really don't like the maths that much. I really don't like the econometrics that much. That's fine. Preferences are all fine. But an economist which says, I have no clue about econometrics, is not going to graduate from our department. Or an economist which says, I don't like maths, I think it's all rubbish, and I don't want to use it ever, and I don't want to learn it, is not going to graduate from our department. So what does that look like? In the first year, you spend about 50% of your time on these tools and skills. In mathematics, in statistics, in econometrics, and applied economics. In your second year, you spend at least 25% of your time in that in the form of a mandatory econometrics module. And you have a mandatory microeconomics and a mandatory macroeconomics module. And we put those modules in there because we essentially believe that if you've mastered that, you could apply to any graduate program in economics. And that's sort of the guarantee that we give to you, but also to the people who are going to be affected. What you do is that we say, well, we've given them the tools and the skills. Whether you decide to use them later on, that's of course your liberty. But it's our responsibility to make sure that you've been trained in them so that you have the choice to use them or not to use them. Now, what is studying economics here at UCL? Well, in the case of alpinism, obviously, this is the picture that most people have. It's also the picture that I have, by the way, on the slide, as you can see. But one thing that you might notice here is that, for example, on the picture with the 3 people and the rope in between them, that the rope is not used in that picture by the first 2 to drag up the last one. Everyone in that group has to climb. Everyone has to climb that, say, icy, steep slope. And that takes effort, that might hurt, but everyone has to do that. The rope is there to give the others a chance to catch you when you slip. And the rope is there to give you a chance to catch the others if they slip. That's what the rope is for. It's not for dragging someone along. The support that we offer in the economics department through our personal tutors, our tutorial tutors, our lecturers, is that kind of a support. It's not the support to carry you to where you want to be, but it's the support to give you some safety and some guidance and some security along the way. But this climb is going to be your adventure, together with us as a community, but it's also going to be very much your adventure. So studying is getting up in your tutorial groups and asking questions for your own benefit, but also for the benefit of your fellow students. It's taking your own notes in lecture classes. And I know many lectures are nowadays recorded, but studying is not returning to the recordings 10 times over so that you can memorize them. Studying is actually making your own notes. And what most students, for example, underestimate is that the learning is in the making of the notes, not in having them. So what we are looking for in terms of students is students who take that active approach, or who want to take that active approach. Students who want to make notes, students who want to produce their own knowledge, students who want to take responsibility, active responsibility for their own studies. Because everyone in our department does that. The researchers are responsible for their own progress. They have to select their sources. They have to find their own questions. They have to find the answers to those questions and have those answers critically examined by their colleagues. You as students in our department should not be an exception to that. You should be part of that same process. So this active attitude towards studying is really important. Now you might be saying, wait a minute, I came here to hear about the minute details of admissions criteria. And this guy's now been talking for about 20 minutes about all kinds of stuff, telling me I should do things. What kind of a thing is this? Well, we have a talk on admissions criteria. So you'll see 2 of those in your program, and I would say you're very much welcome to attend those. The problem that we face is there are lots of things of which I would say you should bring them to our degree program, which I cannot encode into A** AA or into a certain number of GCSEs or into any of these kinds of sort of legally binding criteria. And that's why I said some choice on your side is necessary. I can tell you what we expect and what we are and what we do, and it's up to you to ask yourself whether that is what you want. We're a community of researchers. We love questions. We know that many answers are temporary. We love discussing about those, but we also love hard work to reach tentative answers to difficult questions. And we ask our students to do that. We do it ourselves as well. Now, I usually finish off this talk with a brief clip that contains, as far as I know, no economists, but lots of mountains. And the invitation that I have is that I would like to ask you to think about what you've heard, to think about what studying means, to think about this interaction between the economy, economics, and the rest of the world, and to look at those pictures and to take away that metaphor and to keep thinking about it in the next days, weeks, months, whenever you have some time. It's an important decision that you're facing. It's not a decision that's going to determine the rest of your life, but it's definitely going to determine the next 3 years as you are in a degree program of your choice.
Nadie nos dijo que fuéramos.
Nadie nos dijo que fuéramos.
Nadie nos dijo que lo intentáramos.
Nadie nos dijo que lo intentáramos.
Nadie nos dijo que sería fácil.
Nadie nos dijo que sería fácil.
Alguien dijo
que somos nuestros sueños. Que si no soñamos, estamos muertos. Nuestros pasos siguen el instinto que nos lleva a lo desconocido. No miramos los obstáculos que hemos superado, sino aquellos que vamos a superar. No se trata de ser los más rápidos, los más fuertes o los más grandes. Se trata de ser nosotros mismos. No somos ni corredores, ni alpinistas, ni esquiadores, ni tan solo deportistas. Somos personas. No estamos seguros de conseguirlo, pero estamos convencidos de conquistar la felicidad. ¿Qué buscamos? Quizás vivir.
Often students ask me, what is the subject, what is the module that I have to choose that fits best towards this career? What is the specialization within economics that I should take so that I become the best investment banker or the best policy advisor? What I usually say to them, and what I want to say to you as well, is you can start today with choosing subjects that you enjoy. And if you keep consistently choosing subjects that you enjoy, it is very likely you will end up in a career that makes you happy. If you start consistently choosing subjects that other people tell you to choose, it is very likely you might end up in a life of which you realize that it's the life that other people told you to have. I would like to thank you very much for your attention and have a wonderful day here at UCL.